Hello, hello. Welcome back to Talking Tunes, and today we're going to be talking about di- the pros and cons of different methods of listening to tunes. We're going to be talking about streaming versus physical media. Now, um, both have their benefits, but in my opinion, one of them is very clearly better than the other, and to just smooth over any bullshit lead up that I might try to pull otherwise. I'm just gonna tell you off the bat, physical media is better. This this is better. All right, now I'm not gonna say that streaming is all bad. Of course, like if I didn't stream Selling England by the Pound, which I just grabbed this off the shelf, just because it was handy and I needed at least something to show off why physical media is better. Um, like obviously, if I hadn't looked up Genesis on Spotify and pressed play on this album, I would never have fallen in love with Genesis like I have. And it's just it's just one of those things where I'm not saying that streaming is all bad, but physical media is just better because it just is. Streaming, you might say, well, this is the trump card with streaming. With streaming at the tip of your fingertips, you have access to every single song that has ever been recorded since humans have been able to record things. And you're right, but there is something about holding something like this that is finite that I find better, right? Let's say you have a, a great big room, like an entire public library's worth, or just a section of a public library's worth of vinyl records or CDs or cassettes or whatever, right? Like, yes, there's a lot of music there, and you might get decision anxiety, but it's still not an infinite amount of space, right? It's a lot of space, a ridiculous amount of space, but it's it's uh, it's still a finite amount of space. Meanwhile, if you go on Spotify or YouTube or SoundCloud or wherever else, you could literally type in Penis Shark, and there's probably a song or a band or an album called Penis Shark, and you could probably find that. You don't know that for sure, but it exists, right? And if you do find an album called Penis Shark or a band called Penis Shark, you don't know how good it's gonna be, right? Now, you could make the same argument by just, giving this a look. Nobody, like, when Selling England by the Pound came out in September of 73, nobody buying it for the first time knew what it was going to sound like. If this was your first exposure to Genesis and you bought the vinyl, you didn't know if you just wasted 20 or 30 bucks of your own hard-earned money on a shit record. But when you got home to listen to it, you figured it out. And if you listened to an album that you didn't like very much or that sucked, you knew you were out of money. So again, another thing to streaming, if you like, all you've wasted with streaming then is time. But with, if you've bought, an album, what's the fictional album I came up with? Penis Shark. If you bought Penis Shark and it sucks, you've not only wasted time, you've wasted money, you've wasted energy, driving out to the record shop, driving back to the house, or walking out to the record shop, or walking back to the house. You've just spent a lot of money on something that sucked, and you've wasted a lot of time, and you've wasted a lot of energy. But at the same time, there's a little bit of value because you got an unfiltered experience. If you bought Penis Shark and listened to Penis Shark, you got an unfiltered experience. No ads, no buffering, like nothing. The only hiccup you had was wasting your money on a shitty album and coming in And, maybe you get to return it, maybe you don't. Maybe you just wasted $40. You don't know. But listening to a physical CD like this, or a vinyl record, some people say vinyls are better. It's definitely cool. It's definitely, in terms of album art, it's definitely the better way to go if that's like a real sticking point for you. But for me, if it's just purely for the music, and that's what I'm in for, I'm purely in this for the music and owning my music. You get to listen, you get to listen to this many, 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 many times, and you probably won't. If this CD, it's probably like 20, 30 years old. It was bought new off of Amazon, so it's I guess new old stock. But I can tell just from this style that this was not produced recently. I don't think it was produced this century or this millennium. But I can listen to this thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times and it won't wear out. So that's why CDs beat vinyl, in my opinion, is that vinyl you will eventually have to replace just because it's an analog format, but that's not what we're talking about. I don't think this video is going to do very well, frankly, even for my channel. I'm being relatively incoherent. Another thing, I'm gonna really hone in on streaming music and ads. I use Spotify web player. I'm not banned for Spotify, and for some reason Spotify doesn't let you listen to actual albums through your phone app if you don't pay. I think that's really fucking dumb. So, but yeah, Spotify web player, that allows me to listen to albums in order when I want them. I'm only stuck listening to ads. The other day, I listened to Joe's Garage by Frank Zappa from 1979. It's a brilliant album. It's a triple album. It's 2 hours long. It's a lot of music. But it was extended by ad breaks. And some of these ad breaks, most all of the ads are 30 seconds long. I don't think I've ever come across a 10-second advertisement on Spotify. I don't think I've come across anything longer than 30 seconds on Spotify, so that's something it has over YouTube. But YouTube is for something entirely different. Even though you can use it to find music, it's, how I used it to find music up until a couple of years ago, just because I was a very stupid man up until a couple of years ago. But you listen to something on Spotify, and sometimes, you get hit with not just one, but 2 or sometimes even 3 ad breaks in the course of, for the most part, 40 to 45 minutes. That's just roughly the average for albums, right? So, there's a lot of albums that are longer, a lot of albums that are shorter than that. It's an average. So if you're getting hit with, 3 ad breaks, first of all, if all of those ad breaks are just one ad, you've already added a minute and a half to the experience, which isn't necessarily a lot, but it can be annoying. But in my experience, oftentimes there's at least 2, but for them, there's at least 2 ads per ad break. I very rarely get the single ad per ad break. But a lot of the time, I'm getting 3 or 4 ads per ad break, and they're all 30 seconds long, so that's adding 2 minutes. So take that over the course of Joe's Garage, which is 2 hours, multiply that, so, I'm getting, 3 or 4 ad breaks per, let's say I get 8 ad breaks during Joe's Garage. I've never gotten 8 ad breaks during Joe's Garage. It's just hypothetical. But you're getting 8 ad breaks, which are 2 minutes per album. Which are 2 minutes per ad break. You've added 15 minutes to an already 2-hour album. Now, that's an extreme example. Oftentimes, you're only, adding 2 minutes to a 40-minute album or a 45-minute album or whatever. With CDs, you don't get ad breaks. This album is 53 minutes long. Unless I pause this, from the moment, or have like a power outage, or have an equipment failure, from the like all the longer this is going to take to get through is 53 minutes, right? So again, pure experience, no ads, gets the album over in the time it was intended to be listened to. Again, and there's specific versions of albums that are not on Spotify that are frankly the better version. Now, Genesis have been pretty okay. Like, they're not the worst example I've found with this, but they're, like, it's annoying enough where I bring it up. Genesis, if you go to their albums tab on Spotify, all the albums are the 2007 remasters by default. Now, the 94 masters are on there. For some albums, like Selling England has its 94 remaster on there. A lot of the middle period Genesis stuff does have its, Trespass has its original mix on there. Nursery Crime has its original mix on there. But for a lot of the 80s stuff, a lot, and 2 Peter Gabriel albums, by the way. Supper's Ready and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Those are only the 2007 remasters. Now, with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, that issue is about to be rectified with the 2025 remaster coming in, I think, June or July of this year. So if you're watching this after March of 2025, this issue has been rectified, unless something else has come up, which I will bring up when I'm done talking about this. But if you don't own Foxtrot, or The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, like, if you don't own those on vinyl or CD, so, like, in order to listen to them, you must stream them. Now, some people would say, what about cassettes? Cassettes suck, always have, fuck you. So, if you stream those, you can't, like, the 2007 remasters of Genesis albums suck, they just do. But you can't find the standard version, or the better version of those albums. You just can't. Now, another thing with streaming services, if you, let's say you pay for Spotify Premium. Let's say Spotify has a fallout with an artist, like they did with Neil Young a couple of years ago during COVID. Now, this issue has been rectified now. But Neil Young went off about Joe Rogan, who had an exclusivity deal with Spotify at the time, I'm pretty sure. But he went off about Joe Rogan saying something about the COVID vaccine or something. And so he was just like, hey, Spotify, either Rogan goes or I go. And Spotify went, okay, well, we're making more money from Joe, so fuck you, Neil Young. So if you were a Neil Young fan, or if you were a new Neil Young fan during that time, I don't know why you would be. I think Neil Young sucks. But if you were a new fan of Neil Young at the time, and you wanted to dig a little bit deeper into his catalog, as opposed to, I don't know, living in the free world CD that your parents happen to have, you couldn't find that on Spotify. You had to go through YouTube, which is worse for music. I'll just say it. YouTube kind of sucks when it comes to listening to music. But sometimes you're kind of stuck with that. I honestly had to, during the Pink Floyd Completion Project, I had to look up Richard Wright's second or third, depending on how you look at it. I had to look up Richard Wright's Broken China for the Pink Floyd Completion Project on YouTube. I had to listen to it on YouTube for that review. It's a good album, by the way. But if you were a new Neil Young fan up until, to my knowledge, recently, because Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young Crosby, Stills and Nash also took all their stuff off, at the very least temporarily. But if you were a new fan of any of those artists, you couldn't listen to them on Spotify. So with physical media, I own this copy of Selling England by the Pound. Nobody can take this away from me. The only time I will have to replace this is if I lose it or if the disc gets fucked up. If it disappears off of the internet, and that was your only way, you now have to spend money. So just spend the money to begin with and never have that issue, right? So, again, point being, with physical media, you buy it, you own it, there's no ads, you get a pure experience. And one last thing, these pamphlets. Yes, Spotify does have the lyrics option, but let's say it was added recently to Spotify and nobody's done added lyrics to it yet. Oh, what's this? Oh, look at that. It's the lyrics to one of the songs on the album. It's the lyrics to the Battle of Epping Forest. Look at that shit. Look at that shit. I think this print is fucked up, slightly. Anyway, but yeah, no, look at that. Lyrics to Cinema Show, Isle of Plenty, Isle of Plenty doesn't have, Isle of Plenty does have lyrics, but Dancing with the Moonlit Night, I Know What I Like. The lyrics to all the vocal songs on this album are within this pamphlet. So, if you buy it, you already will know the lyrics if you follow along with them. So, yep, that's gonna do it. Fuck me. Jesus Christ. Alright. It's a bit of a shit video today, frankly. I'm sorry. But yeah, so that's gonna do it for today. I will definitely be reviewing this album in the coming months, not next month, but the following month, because I've got something special planned for May. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to comment. If you want to continue along this musical journey with me, please feel free to subscribe and all that bullshit. If you want to hear me talk about something other than music, I have a podcast with two of my buddies. It's called Dorkies. I will leave a link to the most recent episode of that in the description down below. And if you want to hear what I happen to be listening to that day, you can follow me on Instagram. I will leave a link to that in the description down below. And with that, I would like to thank you all very much for watching and remind you to stay weird and keep jamming. See you in the next one.